everyone. Today we are going to talk about one of the most important parts of fishing theory, locations. Before you rig your bait, make a cast, and reel in a fish, you will need to know where the fish are. We will be covering four basic bodies of water that you'll probably find anywhere near you: rivers, lakes, ponds, and creeks. For simplicity's sake, we'll only go over these four bodies of water. Rivers are a large body of flowing water, lakes are a large body of still water, ponds are a small body of still water, and a creek is a small body of flowing water. Let's start off with the rivers. There's plenty of locations you can fish there, but two of the most common are in a point or a cove. A point is especially good for bass during pre and post spawn, which is about May to June, but could be as early as March or April if you live in the southern parts of the United States. In coves or eddies and backwaters, the water tends to be a lot calmer and is a place where fish seek refuge from the rushing water. They are a lot more beginner friendly than points because you don't need a lot of heavy equipment to fish in these waters. In rivers, you'll most commonly find bass, crappie, panfish in general, catfish, carp, and also trout, salmon, and steelhead if they are in your area. Now let's talk about lakes. Lakes typically look very irregular and have a creek or two flowing into it. They have similar features as in rivers such as points and coves, and use similar techniques in those. And because a lake is a large body of water, wind can still carry waves, which, even though it's calmer than the ones in the river, it can still affect the quality of fishing. Now let's talk about the contour of a lake. Contour is important because it shows what the depth of the bottom is like, therefore giving you plans to fish. For example, in the winter, you may need to target deeper places, and in the summer and during spawn, you may need to target shallower contours. Going back to creeks, no matter where they are, if they flow into a bigger body of water, such as a lake, it forms a mouth, and this is really valuable because the rushing water from creeks provide the lake with oxygen, and there will be lots of fish there. Now we have the ledges and drop-offs, and these are created with the change in contour of the lake, like when a 5-foot depth suddenly goes into an 8-foot depth. There's a drop-off right there, and a lot of fish will be there to seek cover. You can find lots of species in a lake, most commonly bass and panfish, bluegills, and other sunfish. If your lake stocks trout, then you might have some trout in there. Other species in a lake include catfish, carp, and many, many others. Be aware that in fishing locations, there's a lot of gray area, and if that's the case, you will have to use your own thinking to figure out where you might find fish in these locations. Now we'll talk about ponds. Most ponds will have a creek or maybe none that flows into it. In that case, we'll have a mouth, and we also have coves and points. A pond is not known for great contour structures, and fishing in a pond will mainly rely on cover, which we'll talk about later. As for the fish inside a pond, bass, catfish, and sunfish are by far the most common and popular fish to catch in ponds, although there are good carp and trout if they stock them as well. Our final body of water, the creek, is sometimes overlooked, but for multi-species anglers, sunfish anglers, and trout anglers, creeks are probably one of the most ideal locations. Creeks would always have a mouth that feeds into a lake or a river, and this mouth is excellent for catching lots of panfish and maybe some bass. Occasionally, the creek narrows down a little to a large hole or a pool in the middle, and this is one of the best places you can go in the entire creek for fishing. If you cast in the deeper parts, you would find some bigger fish, but along the shallow ends, you'll also find lots of minnows for microfishing, as well as lots of schools of sunfish. This brings us to the species of fish we could find in the creek. Panfish and sunfish are a classic. If the holes are deeper, you may also find catfish and carp, and there could also be trout if you are fishing high mountain creeks. As with what we said before, there can also be different shiners and chubs that you can target with microfishing. Now we'll wrap up about talking about structures and covers. Both structures and covers could be found in any of the fishing locations we talked about. A lot of beginning anglers mix structure with covers. There is a simple rule to separate them. The structure is on the bottom, or in short, anything that is shown on the contour is a structure, like the ledges and drop-offs. Now, a cover is on the bottom or on the top of water, such as a log on the bottom or some lily pads on top of the water. The algae and the rocks on the bottom are also covers. Now, I'll list out some structures and covers. For structures, we would have holes, humps, drop-offs, ledges, and beds. For covers, we have logs, weeds, algae, and lily pads. And you can look these all up online if you want to know what they're like. Finally, I want to mention this one rule that might help you a lot when you are finding fish. If the body of water is wider, then the water is calmer, and if the body of water is narrower, then it is quicker. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe, like, and share.